we've kind of refitted it with all new instrumentation. We tested it out on Shakedown this year, and we're going to bring it out in the field with us maybe later this season and then next year for deployments on other vessels.
Uh-huh.
So it's 6,000 meter rated. Could get us a little bit deeper than Hercules.
So does Little Herc come with its own cable then?
It will, yes.
Okay. That's I imagine that's quite a challenge for a mobile system to have 6+ kilometers of cable on board the back deck as well.
We now have a lot of shipping containers to get things from place to place.
Okay.
Yeah, and then we choose platforms that are roughly the size of Nautilus. Some of them are much bigger. Some are like the RCRVs, the university fleet, are a little smaller. So
right.
It'll be interesting to see the combinations that we could come up with for what we can bring and what we have to leave behind.
I don't know where your microphone is. You're just coming through a little bit quiet on SPL.
Sorry, is that better?
That's much better, thank you.
Yep.
So I was just going to follow up on Josh's comment that Mark Roche is our deck chief, the person who's in charge of all launches and recoveries and deck operations. How long has he been with the Nautilus, do you remember? From the very beginning?
I'd imagine so. Isn't that right, Nicole?
Yeah, and he and Bob have been working together for many, many years since, back when Bob was at Woods Hole.
Okay.
And we had the NOR. The NOR actually is now owned by the Mexican Navy, and we had one of their officers out on Nautilus when we were working off of Mexico, and he works on the NOR, which is not called the NOR anymore, but it was interesting that he and Mark connected about that, what had changed with the ship since Mexico took ownership of it.
Oh, how interesting. Now, I can't remember exactly which discoveries the NOR was involved in, but that was the ship that Bob was operating from when he made some of his major marine archaeological discoveries, as far as I remember.
Yeah, that's a great question. It's certainly an iconic ship, but I'm pretty sure that was one that went to Titanic.
Right.
I don't know what other discoveries it was part of.
I think I was reading about it last night in Bob's book on the Midway explorations, the Midway expeditions, trying to find the American and Japanese aircraft carriers that participated in the Battle of Midway.
We going to step again, Alex?
I think we need to. Yeah.
Yep, keep on going.
I think this next question on Nautilus Live is one that...
Josh, do you want to come like 10 degrees to 030?
I might just give Shannon in the Inner Space Center a little bit of warning for, and I'll just read out the question carefully. So let's imagine that some of the geotransects we did last night, let's imagine the water's not there and it's dry land terrain. What would that terrain that we passed over last night be most like in terms of a landscape on the surface?
It's pretty cool that we had a chance to actually drive into a mid-ocean ridge. This is a rift where two parts of the planet, these plates are splitting apart. So if we're to look for a terrestrial analog, something that's on the Earth's surface that's not covered in water, one of the places we might look at is, say, the Afar in Africa, where we've actually got ripping going on, rifting, pulling apart of those plates, but actually spreading it out. It's very low, it's very hot. I've got lots of basalt there, it's spreading out. We've got other places in the world where we've got more diffuse rifting that goes on, some of it right even in Idaho where I live. But that's spread over a much, much bigger area. So somewhere like the Afar is much more similar to what we were seeing yesterday.
Oh, that's a great answer, Shannon. Thank you. I was also thinking of Iceland. Would that be a suitable analog as well?
Absolutely, that's another great one. Iceland gets a little bit complicated because it has both a mid-ocean ridge and a hotspot. So it's got a really complex system with some extra stuff going on. But we definitely do have that sort of step-down, rifting, fault block action going on there as well.
That's cool. Thank you. So another great question we've had on Nautilus Live that is nice because it complements a lot of the other discussions we've had, but takes it also in a new direction. So we talk a lot about some of the education opportunities available through the Nautilus, such as the internships. But the question we have here is, are there any opportunities for artists or humanities majors to come out on the Nautilus ever?
We were actually just talking about that on the last swatch.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah, we went through a lot of different ways people can be involved, like writing and different aspects of film, and there are science artists and stuff like that.
I know
So,
we've just put a piece up in the lounge just on this very cruise that I believe was produced by an artist last year, I think it was, who came out and tried some different techniques on the Nautilus. One thing she did was she
I've
actually
seen that.
yeah, she got the paint
Yeah,
and she
I'm
actually
following you. You're sorry.
That's okay. She got the paint and actually put it on the canvas and let the ship's motion actually move it out over the canvas. So that's the
cool.
background of that shot. And then she overlaid the representation of the mapping data.
Yeah. Yeah, it's really neat. I didn't know that about it.
But I don't know whether that's part of a fixed regular program for people to come out here in the same way as the internships.
I don't know. But definitely, I mean, arts and sciences go together a lot. There's film and photography and
Can you guys zoom on that possible hydrothermal stuff right there?
Video, go ahead and come impartial. That's good. Looks like there's some shimmer in the water over here. Is there anything in particular you want to see, Shannon? The ciliate mats or?
No, so this is actually should just be us coming up on the approach to the new vent site that we found the other day.
Roger.
Oh,
We named it now.
Yeah, there's
I don't know if we should have a drum roll or something, but we decided we wanted to call it Apollo in honor of the 50th anniversary of the moon landing.
Oh.
So welcome to Apollo.
Wow.
And we're excited that this is now helping us get a better sense for the actual space that's involved for this. We're going to finish a scouting trip on this first thing tomorrow. So you don't need to try and do that now, but part of our goal for today was doing the between the other seep and this one, looking to see if we could find evidence of other seeps in between. Were there a bunch? Did we just miss other stuff because we blue watered before? But now we've actually done the drive and seen that, no, we really were that good when we picked those coordinates, that there wasn't just we could have dropped down anywhere and found something.
Right,
This really is a distinct and separate thing.
Very cool.
Shannon, we were totally cheering in the lounge, you guys. This was really epic, and I look forward to you guys putting down your methodology, and putting it out there and publishing it, because it's really, really cool.
We're pretty jazzed. We're a little bummed that our thing that we were trying to gamble on at the beginning of our transit yesterday didn't pan out, because it looked like it had a lot of potential. But it turns out we got a little too greedy, and it was something that was too tall. We should have thought about that one before we got too hopeful. So, we'll still take it for, 50, betting 500. How about that?
Pretty awesome.
cool. And like right in the middle, lower middle, it looks like a little mini ridge there with the blue ciliate.
Definitely is, yeah. All right, well, we'll see that tomorrow then. That sounds exciting. Nav the distance to target. Roger. 133I.
Belay my last. Give me a sec. New target bearing at 019. I had the wrong target selected.
No, it's okay. 019.
At 25 meters.
That makes sense.
So a great question on Nautilus Live. The voices you heard discussing just there were Darlene and Shannon, two of our scientists associated with this program, and they were talking about publications. And so the question on Nautilus Live is, if folks are actually interested in reading some of your academic publications or places where you publish, where are some of the sites they should search for?
I'm sorry, John, was that question for Shannon?
It was Shannon or Darlene, actually,
yeah.
to just see where typically they publish their results.
10 meters at 007.
Roger.
And whether they're
10 meters, 007, roger.
accessible by the public.
So it's really important for all of our projects that the results that we get from this are accessible to people outside of academia. So we work really hard to open access journals, which means that we have to pay additional money to be able to effectively prepay the cost of access, but then anybody with an internet connection can log on and access them. In one of the related projects, there's several of us actually from the NASA Basalt project, we had a full volume special issue come out in Astrobiology earlier this year talking about our simulated missions to Mars with crewed groups. So we'll follow a similar sort of thing for this. Depending on how things shake out, we may put all of our stuff in independent journals from each other, or we may combine together into a special issue. But we're going to make sure that they're going to be accessible.
That's a great answer, Shannon. Thank you. I actually found the basalt papers just at the beginning of this cruise when Darlene gave me the heads up about them. And so the way I found them for people who are interested is really just search for basalt and astrobiology, and that essentially takes you to the journal whose name is Astrobiology. And as Shannon pointed out there's a whole special issue that talks about a program that's different to that which we're executing at the moment. Basalt was more sort of looking at Mars-like geological analogues on planet Earth. This particular program that we're working on is actually looking at, not even getting that more advanced, but asking the question, what can we learn about terrestrial oceanography and robotic telepresence that might inform our future explorations beyond planet Earth, looking towards the Moon or Mars, or on a longer timescale even further. So I'm sure Darlene and Shannon don't know exactly where they're going to be publishing at the moment, but it's good to know that they have a dedicated strategy of open access journals.
So Nicole, we're just at the GT5.
Yeah, so Shannon, I think if you're happy, we'll start recovering.
Perfect. Thank you guys so much.
Thank you, Shannon. See you tomorrow.
All right.
Hope you guys get some sleep.
Good night.
You too.
Good night.
Bye-bye.
Okay, so I'm gonna come around to starboard. And then you wanna go to port? Yeah. Yeah, if you wanna do your 6-8 first, then I can take out whatever gets put in. I'm gonna back up a little bit to give you some slack. Okay. I'll hold off here. Okay. I'll hold off here if you want to take out your 6-8 wrap. Sorry. Rudder. Okay. Yeah. Okay. Yeah, I see what you're saying.
So for those of you following on Nautilus Live, the ROV pilots are just configuring the ROVs now for ascent through the water column.
Right, so if you turn and go 135, and then I'll follow you around, and then that'll put us in that shape, and that'll take half a wrap out of my 6-8, and then you'll end up with, like if you come around to port to do that, then you'll take yours out. Well, if you're here and you want to end up here.
The way that the ROVs ascend and descend through the water column is typically stern to stern at something relatively close to the maximum extension of the tether that goes between them. That position is adopted to stop the tether flapping around too much in the moving water between them.
I guess, oh, you know what, I gotta actually turn, yeah, you keep going.
It's a nice view.
Yeah, a little slow pan around the
I'll
site.
come up. I guess I gotta come all the way around, don't I?
So I was just going to ask Nicole, while the ROVs are prepping for ascent, can you offer us a preview of what to expect tomorrow, our last dive?
Yeah, sure. Tomorrow is going to be a pretty exciting dive because we're going to come back to this Apollo site to explore it a little bit more. So we're going to spend some time just using the temperature probe on Herc to get an idea of the temperature range of those vents that we just got a little glimpse of at the end of the dive. And then we're going to do our suite of geochemical and microbial sampling, so the IGTs, the super samples, and some rock collections as well. And then we'll end it with another exploratory geotransit. So this one will actually take us up the cliff I had anticipated earlier.
Okay.
I was looking ahead myself, I guess. And so we'll get to see that top of that cliff that we've been working along, which is kind of interesting because a couple of times we've been meaning to get up there, and the weather really kept us off of it. So and we should get to explore the top, which is going towards the older rocks, because yesterday on our geotransit we explored towards the center of the rift, towards the younger material. And so tomorrow we're going to go along the terrace that we've been on, and then up and over onto some of the older material. So we'll get to test out that melting ice cream hypothesis that I think Shannon talked about yesterday.
Sure. And do we have the last few microcolonizers to pick up as well?
We retrieved the last 2 today.
So that wasn't on my watch. Interesting.
Yeah, we had to say goodbye to a lot of the sites that we've spent a lot of time at over the last 2 weeks, and we'll just cover mostly new territory tomorrow, which is kind of exciting.
Yeah, Apollo looks like a great place to spend the day.
Yeah.
So what time are we planning on being in the water tomorrow?
We're going to launch the vehicles at 0400 Pacific time. So for folks on the East Coast, that'll be 7 a.m. breakfast.
Nice way to start the day.
Yeah.
Sorry. I know we have a lot of our fans of Nautilus Live are also fans of space exploration, and so of course this year it's the 50th anniversary of the Apollo 11 moon landings. We don't normally make, I don't know, shameless promotions on board Nautilus Live, but I'd love to recommend a movie to you guys if you haven't seen it yet. It's Apollo 11. Now don't get it confused with Apollo 13 with Tom Hanks. This is a documentary about the Apollo 11 moon landings, but made from completely restored footage. I've seen it in the movie theaters. It's visually amazing, and so if you get the opportunity to actually see that documentary still in a movie theater, or even better in IMAX, I'd heartily recommend it if you're a fan of space exploration and want to celebrate the Apollo missions. This is a pretty busy ridge we're going up as well. A few hydrothermal vent systems there.
Yeah, this actually is the site we'll come back to tomorrow. So Jessica's giving us a little more of a preview. This is right up the ridge line that we'll be exploring.
Oh, cool. It's quite interesting. This view is, it's quite reminiscent of hikes I did as a young man in Chile, up some active volcanoes that would have fumaroles at various places up the ridges as you descend. It feels like a very similar environment. So for those of you following on Nautilus Live, we're just doing our last little climb up an undersea ridge that's part of the Seacliff hydrothermal vent sites before taking the vehicles off the seafloor and ascending them through the water column prior to recovering them later this evening. It's been another very busy day at depth, operating typically at a depth of 2,700 meters. The Seacliff hydrothermal vent sites are part of the broader Gorda Ridge marine feature where the Pacific and Gorda tectonic plates meet each other. And the voices that you can hear coming to, these are all in the control van of the Nautilus. And we are floating above all the action here, 180 kilometers off the west coast of North America, just where Oregon meets California. Are you guys basically ascending now?
Without any horizontals. Okay, good to know.
Copy that. Data lab nav. Data lab nav.
So we're now entering what we call the blue water phase of the dive when we ascend through the water column. That's another great opportunity on Nautilus Live to
It's true.
respond to your questions and comments. You guys can keep us entertained as we bring the vehicles up. So I know a number of you on Nautilus Live have got a few more geological questions. Unfortunately, at the moment, I think Shannon, our resident geologist, who is dialing in from the Inner Space Center in Rhode Island, I think she has finished her shift for the evening and is headed home. So we might not be able to get to all of those geology questions. Another aspect of our expedition that I know has interested a number of you on Nautilus Live is it's kind of looking beyond the primary science we're doing on the seafloor, investigating these hydrothermal vent systems and some of the broader aspects of our expedition. And what that means is, so the subsea expedition is actually a partnership between a number of institutions. I'm afraid I'm not very good at remembering all of them, but the principal partners are NASA and the Woods Hole Oceanographic Institution, among others. Darlene Lim, the PI of Subsea, was very good yesterday evening at giving us the rundown of all the institutions involved. But part of the aim of that collaboration between NASA and Woods Hole and the other partners is essentially to use the detailed science that we're performing on the hydrothermal vent systems as the driving force that pushes us as scientists to explore some of the limits of exploration via robotic telepresence. Okay, this is something that Nautilus, among other research vessels, has really pioneered, the fact that we can link scientists around the world to our technical capabilities on the ship. And that obviously contains a few interesting parallels as to how we might explore one day beyond planet Earth, looking towards the Moon, to Mars, or perhaps even further. And so one of the broader aims of this partnership is to actually say, well, which aspects of our robotic telepresence exploration might be applicable for us to use as an analog of the actual technical term is low latency telecommunications or telerobotics. That latency in this sense means delays in communications. So what aspects of our model for terrestrial oceanography using the Nautilus and scientists ashore might be a good model for scientists from a number of disciplines to study how to make future space exploration more efficient, which is it's a really interesting cruise to be on, because we combine what is already amazing science on hydrothermal vents with this other eye, if you like, that's looking towards a more distant horizon, where we have the potential of learning from the kind of techniques we're operating with now and applying them and asking which of those might be a successful model to apply or adapt in the future. So for those of you asking the question about our dive plans, so as Nicole, our watch leader and expedition leader, explained to us a few moments ago, so tomorrow is our last dive at Gorda Ridge. After that, we'll be undertaking a 40-hour transit back to our base of operations in San Francisco, at Vallejo near San Francisco. We'll be there for a couple of days, where we demobilize this expedition and mobilize the next one. For those of you wanting to know a little bit about what the Nautilus will be doing next, I'd encourage you, as you're watching us right now on nautiluslive.org, to take a look at some of the links across the top of that web page. And the one you're looking for is the one that says the expedition. That's going to give you an expedition by expedition overview of everything that Nautilus is going to be doing over the rest of the summer, exploring out to as far as American Samoa, and then heading back to finish up the expedition season just offshore from California once again in some of the national marine sanctuaries there. I believe the very next expedition that Nautilus is doing once we return to port is a mapping leg heading from San Francisco out to Hawaii. I'm not actually sure what we offer people on the mapping legs. I was just going to ask that question to Nicole if she's still available. Do we have SPL running, or do we do any kind of outreach when we're on the mapping legs?
We do some outreach, but it's more planned because we recognize there isn't as big an audience for mapping, although I don't understand why. I think it's fascinating. We will do usually a question and answer that's like pre-programmed. So we announce like tomorrow we'll do a 1-hour Q&A and have people on watches in the van to answer questions. So it's always fun because we get people to write in questions, and sometimes we're able to show people the launch of the underway CTD or an XBT. We've done Facebook Live events occasionally during mapping cruises, and I think there's actually maybe a plan to do those on this next one. And we always do our interactions to schools and other venues that request them.
Well, that's great. I mean, yeah, there's still lots of amazing science to be done on the mapping legs. And I know, is it Lindsay who's the expedition leader there?
Yep, he'll be leading that expedition.
Yeah, he's if you need somebody to enthuse people about mapping, he's the person you want.
That's for sure.
thank you also to those of you on Nautilus Live inquiring about the toaster situation. You are correct that you think with a crew full of engineers and electricians we might be able to fix it, but unfortunately we think it is beyond repair. I'm not sure where we might get a 220 volt toaster in San Francisco, but we're going to give it our best shot.
I've been informed actually that one is on its way.
Oh, fabulous.
Yes. It was, you know, one of the important things I talked to the captain about today.
I see. I see. So I know that another question we've been getting quite a few times on Nautilus Live is actually asking us to discuss the link between how we explore Earth's oceans and how we might one day explore ocean worlds that we know to exist on some of the moons of the planets in the outer solar system. And I guess it's worth starting an answer to that question by just kind of emphasizing that on this particular expedition with NASA subsea team, we're not trying to directly make that link. What we're really trying to do is to use a credible scientific expedition as a testbed, if you like, for low latency telerobotic exploration, and to see how we can learn about the parallels we might draw between the challenges that we are able to encounter in exploring Earth's oceans and how that telerobotic exploration method could be extended to environments such as exploring the moon or exploring places such as Mars. But it's always fun to let, in these quieter moments, the gaze go out a little bit further, and just to kind of set the scene for answering that question. So using essentially robotic space probes over the last 20-25 years, we have gathered pretty impressive evidence that some of the ice moons that orbit Jupiter and Saturn, and particularly I'm thinking of Europa orbiting Jupiter here and Enceladus orbiting Saturn, that these bodies, even though quite tiny, potentially harbor vast oceans of liquid water, and we can go a little bit further than that, liquid salty water. So water conditions that we think could be quite similar to the conditions that we encounter in Earth's oceans. The next kind of question is, well, why might hydrothermal vents, why might we speculate that hydrothermal vents might exist in these oceans, and that the kind of exploration that we undertake with the Nautilus might one day be something that we see replicated further out in the solar system? And there's actually a neat kind of chain of some very different concepts that link together to tell a really interesting story. And I guess the first thing is you have to look at planet Earth and realize that planet Earth is essentially a vast ball of molten rock and metal that's hot. And then the question is, that stumped geologists and oceanographers for a number of years, is how does that heat get from the interior of the Earth to the surface? Because when you look at any average place on the surface of Earth's crust or the bottom of the ocean, the heat flow through it appears to be too low given what we expect should be there. And then in 1977, one of the answers came when we discovered hydrothermal vent systems for the first time. And these are almost exclusively, not 100%, but almost exclusively associated with tectonic plate boundaries or weak spots on the surface of the Earth's crust. And what we realized is that the locations traced out by Earth's tectonic boundaries kind of trace out short circuits, if you like, where the heat flow is much greater than the average, and this appears to be where most of Earth's interior heat is finally getting out to the surface and then radiating away to space. Now, it turns out that the interiors of these ice moons orbiting Jupiter and Saturn, they also have sources of internal heat, but they arise from a different source, what we call tidal energy, And that's that the combination of the gravitational pull of their parent planet, either Jupiter or Saturn, combined with their elliptical orbits, means that they're, for want of a better word, squashed and squeezed once per orbit as they go around their parent planets. That results in vast compression and extension forces on the rock layers that make up the interior of the moons. And just like when you rub your hands together and produce friction that you can feel as heat, the rock layers move together like you're rubbing hands and produce this continuous source of internal heat in these moons. And then we come to the point where we speculate. Okay, so we speculate by noting that on Earth, Earth's interior heat seems to escape through these short circuit features that we call hydrothermal vents and plate tectonic boundaries, and that we speculate that if heat flow proceeds by a similar kind of short circuit process on these ice moons, then that creates conditions where we might see features on these moons that look similar or analogous to hydrothermal vents. And that's kind of, you know, the summary of the some parts evidence and some parts speculation that allows us to, if you like, use our imaginations and to imagine out on these ice moons, under the ice sheets, in these vast oceans, that there might be geological features that resemble Earth's hydrothermal vents. Of course, having stated that speculation, then that puts the challenge on us, or more realistically our children and our grandchildren, to actually go there and explore those locations. And yeah, it's a pretty neat story that kind of begins with
Can't hear you.
exploring Earth's oceans and ends up with the ice moons of the solar system. So Sarah, how's the sunset looking out there?
It's nicely lit out there.
Cool. We had a rainbow out there earlier, and we've had some pretty spectacular sunsets out here in the Pacific the last few nights.
Yeah, I think the sunset might be just over.
Oh yeah?
I don't know. I mean, it's more off the port side, so
Are you going
it's
to
a little hard to see.
You're going to weave some of your video magic?
Well, I tried earlier and it was a little too far. Too far port, maybe. Yeah, a little.
Oh, we're just pointing in the wrong direction today.
Yeah.
Still, it's a pretty peaceful evening out there.
But it was
not
very
bad.
serene.
Low winds, low swell. Hopefully that looks good for tomorrow morning. We'll keep our fingers crossed. So just, I know a few of you are following up on those comments I made on Nautilus Live, and we are continuing to send robotic space probes to explore some of these moons of the outer solar system, but the present orbiting craft at Jupiter is called Juno. Cassini, that had been exploring the Saturnian system for approximately 12 years, was intentionally deorbited in 2017 into the atmosphere of Saturn to kind of provide sterile disposal of the spacecraft, as its reserves of fuel were going down to zero. more will follow, but I believe those that are planned, of those that are planned, essentially any exploring beneath the ice sheet we're going to be doing is via remote sensing, such as long wavelength radar imaging through the ice layers, similar to what's done to image through the Antarctic ice cap or image through even the Martian ice cap with long wavelength radio waves. So we're not talking about melting or drilling through the ice yet and going to explore. That's still a long way off. No! I thought you were. I've got loads, thank you, Jess. It's not good. There's going to be no shortage of chocolate this evening.
I'm good, thanks.
Actually, what is it? Oh, Twix. No, it's good. Twix is. I've got better than Twix for us. I'm going to break out the fine dark chocolate with sea salt later. Along with the cigars and brandy.
Ooh, don't forget about the back row.
Now you guys wake up.
It's just me back here.
Oh, yeah?
Deep in some spreadsheets.
Solo.
But, you know, that sounds pretty tasty.
Where's our authority gone? There's no adult in the room anymore.
She's around. She's
Hey, I hear you guys.
Okay.
I'm policing from the lounge.
Ah.
Keep it in line up there.
So for those of you who are curious, we are ascending without passengers. We managed to lose all of our hangers-on before ascending through the water column. Just there on the Hercules view, you can actually see the pilots have positioned the Mongo arm just resting over the IGTs, the isobaric gas tight samplers. The reason we do that is just as the vehicle swings around a little bit on recovery back onto deck, that just gives them an extra layer of security to make sure they stay where we've put them. I was just wondering, Josh, have we got an ETA for back on deck based on our rate of ascent?
Oh, we got about 3 hours.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, we could get a little lighter, maybe.
Anyone bring any movies?
Negative. I can try wagging some more and
Which way are you going? The good way right now, or the
I'm
not
going
so
the
good,
good
way?
way.
You're going the good way?
Mm-hmm.
Uh-oh.
So have we got any Niskins to fire on the way up?
No, they're
Nope.
all done.
Okay.
Which way are you going now? You going the not so good way?
I'm still going the same way. I'm just trying to see if I can modify the laterals.
I guess you could go get a little lighter.
Yeah.
Barely doing 15
Yeah.
or 13, I guess.
Try the other way.
So if any of you guys following on Nautilus Live want to help us pass the time, feel free to send us your questions, comments, science questions, jokes, good or bad. We'll take them all this time of night.
Yeah.
So Megan, how do you keep yourself busy on blue water back there in the back row?
At the moment, I am working on a sample spreadsheet, which is pretty exciting.
Uh-huh. Still needs to be done.
Of course. Yeah, it's actually a good time to do it.
I believe the technical term as well is the sample spreadsheet of science.
Yes, exactly. That's right.
Megan, has anybody ever told you that you have a great radio voice?
You know, I've heard that maybe once before by some Nautilus Live regular, perhaps.
Well, you do.
Thank you. I don't know what that means about my future. Maybe I'll be switching over to radio.
I was once told I have a great face for radio. I decided...
Everyone was like, should we have laughed?
The silence. We didn't mean it.
There's so much more to life than physical beauty.
It's true.
Now it just became harder. Break it off before you grab it. It's in bubble though. Oh, now you're making it even harder.
Oh, I meant to ask Josh.
Expert level.
Yeah.
Pardon me?
I meant to ask Josh, how did Cassidy do on her arm training last night?
I actually didn't have a chance to catch up with her.
Okay.
It we've been sort of, you know, passing each other on watch changes and stuff, so I haven't had a chance to speak with her in a little bit, but sure it went good.
Yeah.
Trevor's a good trainer, so.
So Cassidy is one of our ROV interns on the cruise, and they get worked pretty hard. They start flying Argus on day 1.
Just turn your jaw on 90. Yeah.
And then had a chance on one of these blue water ascents to actually get a bit of a workout with the Craft Predator arm that you can see there on Hercules feed or quad view channel 1, top left, sorry. So for those of you wondering why we have 2 manipulator arms and what we use the arm on the left for, nicknamed Mongo, it's my last cruise was with Ocean Networks Canada in 2017, and there we used it a lot just to anchor ourselves to pieces of equipment.
Yeah, that's right. It's actually got lots of uses. It's a little slower and a little can be a little more challenging in a position. I think for us sometimes it's more challenging because we don't use it as much. So I think once you actually use it for a little while, you can get pretty good at.
Okay.
Get pretty good at it, but it's really good for holding on to things, for protecting things for launch and recovery, like what we're doing with it right now. We use it a lot in the Gulf of Mexico when we're doing coral surveys. We put a camera in its arm.
Oh, interesting.
So we could actually get a camera in a housing right out in front of the corals and take some really amazing high resolution still photography.
Okay.
Yeah, and for Ocean Networks Canada, it's used a lot. Gets a good workout
Yeah.
on that one because there's a lot of things to carry up and down, and we use it to hold on to platforms for plugging and unplugging connectors. And so, yeah, it's, you know, it's not quite as dexterous as the Craft, but it definitely has a lot of solid uses.
I noticed on the porch as well, you we always dive with a knife attached to the front of the porch. Is that kind of a experience has taught you to have kind of a few go-to tools on the porch?
Yeah, that's right. We always have actually 2 knives with us.
Right.
Always good to have a backup.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's just in case there's things can get caught on the vehicle. I've had more than, well, a handful of occasions where we've been caught up in fishing gear or stray ropes or things that we need to kind of cut ourselves out of. And if you don't have a knife, it can get pretty ugly. So yeah, it's always good as just a safety precaution, just to have something to defend ourselves with against some stray bits that can be in the ocean sometimes.
Mm-hmm.
Not so much out in the really deep water, but up in the shallows, if you're working on the coastline where there's a lot of fishing goes on, then it can happen.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.